My go live button won't
Yeah.
work.
Oh, same. Um, okay, interesting. Oh, now it will. Maybe. Okay, here we are. Alice, can you hear me? Mic check. We are in.
I am here.
Okay,
Yeah, all good.
we're streaming. We're streaming to a bunch of random places, and some folks joining us. And we're super excited today to take give a fire hose of a conversation on financial realignment. We've really been on this kick lately about getting aligned, and I think you were talking with somebody the other day, and they're just like, it's just good to get on the same page with your spouse. I mean, I guess before we go into financial realignment, I'm just like, how do you explain just this whole idea of like, what does it feel like to be aligned? What does it feel like not to be aligned? How do you explain that in general?
Yeah, well, I think we all have those times where we feel like, when you're in a partnership, a marriage, really any relationship where you feel like there's a tailwind, right? Like you feel like you just got the wind just kind of pushing you, everything feels really good. And then you have those times where it's like, holy cow, what just happened? Like we can't agree on anything, like anything from like where to go to dinner to whatever. And then you bring in a topic like money. My gosh, like let's pick the one of the most controversial things ever. What
Yeah.
and truly one of the biggest reasons for divorce, right, is like not being on the same page related to money. So I think it's a really important conversation that we're gonna have.
And if you're watching this today, you probably fall into one or two camps. One, you're one of our clients over the years, right? Like we're friends on Facebook. Maybe you're one of our clients, and so we realize like we've looked back over the years and be like, oh my gosh, like helping people buy and sell homes is literally, especially when we sit down with a couple in any capacity, it is like, how do we help them take one of the most stressful financial events of their lives and moving and everything else and get on the same page about it, want
Mhm.
the same thing and execute it in the same way. Or you're one of our colleagues from around the country and we've really we've really got a heart for that lately, right? And so much so that we started this community realigned for couples specifically in real estate. I don't know, it's not quite a support group. It's but it's support meets
But it
mastermind
kind of is.
else. Yeah, we all need support, right? Like it's a group that we wish that we had in some ways along the way. So that's awesome. What we're going to cover today is we're going to talk through. Let me make sure I can click on this. Oh, you know what? Hang on. This will drive me nuts. Hide magic cursor. Okay. Now, we're going to talk through today 5 strategies that we use to get realigned. And I guess before we do, Alice, I mean, introduce them to the reason that we are aligned. Like this is the cause for it all, and the reason
I
for
don't know. I think it's a result of being aligned. I don't know
that.
if it's the
Well,
cause.
yeah, that could be true. That could be true.
Yeah, well, here's the crew. We've been married for just over 24 years, and we've got 4 daughters, 21, 19, 15, and 12. And this was on a family vacation to Spain last year.
Yeah, indeed. This was a good one. Probably up ready for a new photo. On a business level, here's some of the different things that we've been involved in over the years, and some of them are a little bit more your thing right now. Some are a little bit more mine. There's a lot that is shared in
Mhm.
common. So we run a real estate sales team, the Daily Group. We've got a brokerage with a few locations, Kelly's Gateway. I'm dabbling in like sharing insights that I've got to the world and the business community and coaching and whatnot. You're also coaching. That's not even on here. And then Table Builders, Magic Mom, you're a published author. I am not. We have 2 in the family. I am not one of them. And then Realigned, right? So this is sort of what we're into on the business world. If you want to connect with us on any of these elements, man, we sure would love to. Let's dive in, hun. So we talk about these like 5 strategies that we use to get in alignment, and I think this could be overwhelming for people. The hope would be just pick one that inspires you today, right? If you grab
Yeah.
2, that's a bonus point. But like, if you just picked one of these ideas and it really speaks to you, that'd be great. You want to kind of start to walk through them, and then we'll show some imagery. But yeah, talk to us
And I
about.
would say, I ideally, you're watching this together with your partner. And if
Mm,
you're watching by yourself, just know that you can use these as well. So this is time well spent for any idea that you're going to pick up along the way. But what we're going to just share with you is 25 years of our conversations and how we've distilled them down into a really practical, usable, how do we have this conversation right here, right now around money? Because it's not something we can get away from, right? Like you can decide to not talk about money, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't think many of us, I know I certainly wasn't taught how to talk about money. And so, I mean, if we don't learn it at home, you don't learn it in school, like where do you learn how to talk about it and how to have a healthy conversation around it? So each one of these five um, areas is kind of is really a tool. It's a framework around how we think about how we think about how we filter through thinking about money.
Well, even when you say like, hopefully you're watching this with with your spouse or your partner. Yeah. And the reality is these tools we think can be used anywhere. They could be used for your individual goals. It's just the
Mhm.
stakes get really high. Like we think that we're good at goal setting. We think that we're good at planning. We think we've got, now try doing it with a partner. And all of a sudden, something you thought you were really good at, you get with another human being whose brain works differently, who is not the same person. And
Mhm.
it's hard. And yet it creates amazing music in the world when you can actually get aligned in what you're trying to do. Uh, we never went into full-time ministry, but we did go to a college and thought we were going into full-time ministry. And so, like in good preaching format, let's have every word start with the same letter because that's how it's done, apparently. I'm joking, not joking. So I've got 5 metaphors for you today with imagery, and we'll walk through each of them. But the first one is this idea of the compass. 5 ways and strategies that we use to get aligned. And the first one is the idea of the compass. And I mean, Alice, like when you're talking about like drifting apart, I mean, I think this is kind of where that came from, right? Like we thought we were on the same page, and then we wake up 5 years later, 10 years later, and then we've just drifted and we just realize it's, oh my gosh, we never actually got aligned, especially in the area of our core values. What would you
Mhm.
kind of share on that?
Well, it just all of life is just a series of making decisions. We're making decisions every second of every day. And so the better that we can become at making conscious decisions, the higher just the better quality of life that we get to live. But I was just even thinking like, okay, if it's really true that everything we do is making a decision, I just like, all right, my alarm goes off in the morning. Am I gonna get up right now or am I gonna hit snooze? There's a decision. I was thinking about what am I going to wear this morning? That was a decision. What was I going to do with my hair? That was a decision. So think about like actually how many decisions we make in a day. And so if we're wanting to make better decisions, we have to look at what drives our decisions. And at the core, our values just drive the decisions that we make. And whether it's conscious or unconscious, values still drive those decisions. So, what if we're able to consciously identify our values so we're making the quality of decisions that we want to make? Again, something that wasn't taught to me in school, that wasn't taught until way, I didn't get to learn until way later. But once you realize, like, we can actually choose our values and make our decisions from that place, you get an entirely different
Yeah.
result.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't think about what I was going to wear. I was going to wear a black shirt, and I
Which
also
no, you
did.
decided which black shirt, the clean one or the dirty
Yeah,
one?
yeah, just the clean one. And then I also didn't think about my hair. I mean, so you
Okay.
obviously have decision fatigue in a way that I don't. I love this quote, right? When your values are clear, your decisions are easy, or at least easier, right? No
Easier.
promises that
Mhm.
they'll be easy. But so much of the time when we feel out of alignment, it is because we did not take the time to clarify our values. So let's walk you through a couple ways that you might think about clarifying values. One, all you have to do is Google values worksheet, and you will find a million examples online. Here's one, Alice, that you kind of put together, a little bit of
Mhm.
you, a little bit of Chat GPT, your admin helping. So here's some values. And what I think is really cool about this is it separates them out into quadrants, right? And high energy, low energy, those are my words. I realize that's actually probably terrible, but I like how you said if the top is, well, I'll use high energy, but if the low, calm, Calm would be a good an example. It doesn't mean low as in a bad thing. And then inward focus and outward focus. The first step would be, as an individual, is to maybe grab a piece of paper like this, or any other sheet, and start to list out your core values. By the way, there's lots of ways to do a core values elicitation for yourself or others. There's lots of strategies for this. We just want to give you a very simple toolbox of, like, grab a piece of paper like this, screenshot this, circle a bunch of them. Look down at how many you circled, and let's say that you got to about 10. Move to the second section, right? So this is an individual exercise at first. So you move to the second section, and all we want you to do is—
and hold on a second. Yeah. Hold on. The reality is there's like 200 words. There's a lot of words on here, right? Like, or you go and you look at a bunch of words, you're like, holy cow, this is a lot of words. The reality is, when I did this the first time, like, I took a first run at it, I had 50 words. Right? So we're going to give you this worksheet that'll start with 10. You might go through iterations of this before you even get to it. And you're really just looking at it's what the word means to you is all that matters, because you're going to have a different definition of the word, let's say leadership, than I do. We don't have to sit here and debate what leadership means, because all that matters is my definition of it. So in this sense, this is a very individual exercise, and we could do, I have done 4 hours just on talking about values. So again, what we're giving you here is like, we're like right on the surface here, snorkeling when it comes to this. And yet there's some really deep work that we can do again in the future on it. But just give yourself some grace with it. Circle the ones that just speak to you. You don't even need to know why they speak to you. Whichever ones click, just let it click and go.
Yeah. Either way, as you start to get clarity on the words for you, which is just an exercise that most of us don't do. We do not do this often. It just doesn't end up in our calendar. So the next section would be some sort of like funneling them down. So if you look at kind of the top of this, the top 10, then the top 5, the top 3, the top 1. The whole point is that for your own values, for yours, start to prioritize. A simple way to do that is simply you read out 2 words. What's more important to me, freedom or stability, right? And there's hierarchies of ways to ask questions to figure out what's more important. And it's just like, it's like when you go to the doctor's office or the optometrist, and they put on the lenses, and they're like A or B, A or B, and you say A, and they're like A or C, A or C. You're going.
They do numbers. They don't do letters. They do numbers.
They do numbers. Okay, sorry. Well, all right.
And because we're talking about money in this one, we're going to keep our values on this today focused around money.
Yeah, absolutely. Which could end up feeling different for you in different areas, right?
They usually do.
So then you get to, as you start to narrow yours down, somewhere around the top 3, share with your partner. So Alice and I did this the other night out on date night, because why not? And we got, like, we kind of worked through them on our own, and we've been pretty clear knowing what our values are. We gone on a lot of dates and a lot of date nights. We do this stuff. We got to about the top 3. I listed mine, Alice listed hers. And then we kind of, now all of a sudden we're in a shared environment, right? So now we're kind of looking at them. And I was pretty clear. I think I starred my top 1 and you starred your top 1. And then we're like, all right, what do we want ours to be? So there's you, there's me, and there's us. And that can be an entirely new concept. That's actually what makes this conversation unique, right? Because we're actually trying to talk about how do you get on the same page together with your finances, but it starts with, you've got to have some shared elements of shared core values. And we wrote the word here, our current core values. We don't think of core values like in a moral sense. There's going to be attributes of who you are that you're like, well, this will never change. Awesome. And yet we have had seasons where a core value was stability, and we have had seasons where a core value was freedom or growth. And that doesn't mean that we became a terrible version of ourselves, right? Just because we changed. your core values can change as your goals change. If you want to go through an exercise like that, go to Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins, and he actually will have you set goals first and core values later, which blew my mind because I had always thought you set core values first and then you did goals. And Tony reverses it in this 7-day course called Date with Destiny. It's fantastic. Anything else you want to share on this, hon? Or we can, I mean, we'll share a few of ours.
Yeah.
We came up with, right?
Oh, you know what I would share, Seth, is just the difference between actual values and aspirational. This came up in our conversation the other night too.
Yeah. Explain that.
There's some values that we have that are actual. It's like right now, financially, like stability, right, is like an actual value that drives our life. And freedom is aspirational. Like we're not at the point where it's like our money is working so hard for us, we can just go take off and come back in a year and everything would be okay. Like we don't have that kind of freedom. That is an aspirational value. So there's importance in both of them.
Yeah. While we're on A words for values, I remember when I was talking the other night, adopted. You might find you wrote down a word that when you look at it, you're like, is this even my value? Like, or who did I adopted this from my family. Do I even want this going forward? Right. You might find that there's some values. I think for us, probably somewhere in this range of like frugality and like, I don't know, it goes a little bit to the stage of scarcity and guilt in a way that we question it from time to time. Like, is this really a value that we want to pass on?
And values in and of themselves, like you can look at every word on the page. None of them are good or bad.
Yeah.
They all have a light and a shadow side. There's a light side to all of them. There's a shadow side to all of them. So just don't judge whatever words are values for you. Because there's some words you look at and you're like, ooh, this just all feels bad. It's like, no, like there's good and light and shadow to all of it.
It's like two sides of a coin, right? Everything will have both sides of it. So the first tool that we use when we are not feeling aligned on money is we go clarify our values, and it simply is a start to a conversation. Like if the way that all of us relate in the world is a function of like the quality of our life is the quality of our relationships. Well, the quality of our relationships is really the quality of our conversations. We just want to give you with your significant other a conversation to have that will be meaningful when it comes to the financial area of your life. So first area for us was our values. The second exercise that we'll go through, and we think these are sequential, but maybe not, is the idea of, you might have heard of it as a wheel of life. So the C stands for car, and what we really care about is the wheel. And you see all of these different wheels, all these different types of wheels that are out there. Here's a way to understand the wheel. When you are going down a road at 10 miles an hour, and life feels slow and calm, your life might not be bumpy. But when you start to speed up, and maybe speeding up means jobs, speeding up with kids, speeding up with just all of these commitments, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I am rolling down the road at 100 miles an hour, and life feels really, really, really bumpy. It's something that happened with the wheel. Right. And if you're a car mechanic and you're going to tell me that that's not actually it, it's a freaking metaphor, just like let me have it. So it is something with your wheel. And so the way that we think about it is, let's actually pick a wheel of life for this one area. So now's when you start to actually think about your goals, right? So you might be thinking in the area of finances, what are the 6 to 8 factors? And it could be 5, it could be 10, doesn't really matter to us. It's just the number of kind of slices of the pie or spokes on the wheel. But what are the areas that matter to you most? This is an exercise for you to do. This would be an exercise to start to do together, right? Alice, what would be sort of, well, here, I'll share ours, or some that we just talked about, and we could share more. Here would be some examples for us. And Alice, if you want to share on any of them, please do. But like cash flow, right? That would be an example of a pillar or a spoke inside of our financial well-being that matters to us. Uh, Interestingly, the opposite of cash flow in some ways can be appreciation, right? There's some assets that we buy that have cash flow, some assets that we buy for appreciation. They could be different, right? Net worth, legal and tax strategies, risk protection, tracking. There could be seasons where everything feels like it's going okay, but we just don't feel like we have optics on like where's the money going or how much are we earning? Are we just kind of looking, and if there's money in the bank account, then life is good, or are we doing it a different way? Anything that you'd share, Hun, either about these or ones that aren't on here?
Yeah, I'll just give you a couple others, like savings could be one, retirement, passive income, um, legacy, even thinking about, you know, what kind of money you want to leave and like what that looks like. I mean, there's almost an infinite number of things you could put down here, and it's just pick the ones that are important to you in this season. And for us, we know these are ones that would move the needle for us. It's not that we don't care about legacy. It's not that we don't care about retirement. But for us, we know these are the things right now for us that are going to drive the needle in this season. So those are the ones that we choose to focus on a more regular basis.
So just to make this kind of practical for people, so I'm gonna let's see if I can do this. Who knows, Hun? All right. Yeah, you got me. All right, we got a hand. All right. So literally everything that Alice and I do from a planning perspective usually can be done on the back of a napkin, or certainly on the back of a menu. So we like going to restaurants with paper menus. Maybe we're cheap that way. I don't know. But we certainly like them to write. I do. So if imagine that you just start to set out what is your current wheel of life when it comes to finances. So Alice mentioned a couple, and I'm gonna put some of them on here. So cash flow, savings. I'm gonna put appreciation. Let's see, net worth. Savings, we'll consider that like emergency fund as well. All right, that's passive income. That's one that we care about.
Seth, you're gonna have to write bigger. I can't see any of it.
Oh, I can't. All right, well, it is what you get. Let me see if I do this.
There you go.
You just won't see me, but that'll be fine. So it's going to be this for now. You just won't see me. All right. So here's what's interesting. So we just purchased something. And we just had a purchase, and it was a really big investment property for us. So what we want to walk you through is an example of when a wheel gets out of alignment, right? So here's our wheel, and when a wheel gets out of alignment, what it can feel like is we bought this property. Here's what happened: our savings took a hit. If we were up here, now all of a sudden, like, we're down here. Our net worth, we thought that was a good move. So wherever we thought our net worth was, like, that went up higher. Our passive income over time, we thought it was a good move. Okay, so we think that it's helping us shift from active income to passive income. So we liked that. It was an appreciation purchase. Okay, so appreciation went higher. But here's the thing: we actually might lose money on this thing for the next several years. It's in a resort market. It's going to be hard. So all of a sudden, now people, oops, good Lord. Let me do this again. Now, all of a sudden, our wheel got really bumpy. We were in alignment, yet we made a financial decision. And you could just see, like, if you look at that wheel and you sketch it out, you're like, yeah, that's going to feel bumpy for a bit. And all that does is creates a conversation for us to say, all right, what do we need to work on? Right? Even the fact that, like, we bought it was a triplex, so 3 rentals at once. And if I said the area over here was tracking, I'm like, wow, there's a lot more accounting that I need to do for this. Like, which ones are rented, which ones aren't, how do we get them up on Airbnb, hiring property managers, all that sort of stuff. That is an example of a decision that we were in alignment on. And yet then we made the decision, and guys, the wheels started to feel really bumpy for a little bit. And now we're actually able to have conversations of, all right, if that was an appreciation and a net worth play, we need to refocus on cash flow and replenishing savings.
Mhm.
right? It's not a matter of always making the same decision. It's like you can actually fix this, and by making a different decision next time to sort of counterbalance. Anything you want to add on that while I get back to sharing our screen here?
Well, it's funny, it's just the analogy of the car going down the road, like, it really felt like because we weren't looking for this property, right?
Yeah,
It hit us, so it almost found us when we were on vacation, and it the car started going really, really fast, and the image that came to mind for me was, like, when you get air under the tires, it's like you start going so fast, it's like you're not even the wheels aren't even on the ground anymore, it's like you're getting air, and it's like, "All right, hold on for dear life." Like,
yeah,
it started to feel a little bit like that, and so this is just a really grounding exercise to visually see what's happening to the
yeah.
car in the
It-
moment.
yeah, guys, just like we just could not encourage you enough as a couple. If you will take time to write down, draw a circle, make slices of a pie or spokes of a tire, and write out a list of the criteria. So, different than values, these could be values, right? But like if a value is stability, the way that shows up on this slice is emergency fund. It's like it's almost like the value personified in an area of tracking, right? By the way, another example, if a value is stability, it could also show up on here as tracking, like how to see things. Like that's a thing that creates
Yeah.
stability. So you're getting a little bit more detailed, but this for us, if you ever have had seasons of your life where you're like, I look back and I really regretted some decisions that I made or decisions I didn't make. I was on autopilot. A great example, probably for I'm going to guess 95% of us that are on here right now, is if you look back and you're like, I focused a lot on active income, working hard, but I don't feel like I focused in the same way on passive income.
Mhm.
And then there's people that we all admire. And you know what? If we saw their wheel of life in this area, passive income was absolutely on there. Right. So there would be some examples. Okay. All right. The third C. I love this one. Alice, I think you do too, but who knows? Anybody want to guess which horse is Alice and which horse is me? And let's give it up for ChatGPT and their new creation of images. Every image you see on here is ChatGPT, or some actually not idea. It's a different one, but it's AI. Here's the crazy story about Clydesdales. If you're like, why in the world would you pick horses and Clydesdales on here? Here's the story about Clydesdales. If one Clydesdale, I'm going to make this up right now, can pull 8,000 pounds. When you put two Clydesdales together, you would assume 8,000 plus 8,000 means they can pull something that is 16,000 pounds. Yet here's what they found. When you put two Clydesdales together and you harness them properly, and harnessing is a metaphor here for playing to our strengths, right? Harnessing our unique ability, to use the language of Dan Sullivan. When you harness two Clydesdales correctly, they can pull like 32,000 pounds. It is why in each of our relationships, we feel like, how do we make 1 + 1 equal like 4 or 11 or 3 or something? And inversely, the really crappy times in your relationship, in our relationship, when we feel like I'm putting in full effort and you're putting in full effort, why does it feel like we're getting like 1 + 1 equals like 1.5? Like what's happening? And
Yeah.
it's because we haven't taken time to actually talk about our strengths and how to harness them correctly. So
It's just a missing they're just missing conversations
yeah,
at the end of the day, so let me encourage you, like, if you're one of those places where you feel like 1 + 1 equals anything less than 2, it happens, and it doesn't need to take a whole lot of time to get to a place where 1 + 1 can be 11. It's just a missing conversation.
and for me, it usually starts with like looking in the mirror, or I can think of you and I were on a walk recently, and we're just like, we're we're better than this. Like we know there is untapped potential for our relationship. We know that you have strengths. We know that I have strengths. And we know that if we put those strengths together, we're just got to like fine tune
Mhm.
exactly the roles, but we know that we're capable of so much more. And I think every
Yeah,
couple experiences those moments where
for
you
sure.
know you're functioning highly as a couple, and seasons where you feel like you're not. And it's possible, right? So asking questions of each other, like, hey, what do you love? What do you hate? What feels most important, least important? Here it is on a chart. And again, everything we do, you could go to a restaurant, turn the menu over and draw it out, right? All we do is make a matrix, and we use this exercise repeatedly. You want to kind of walk people through how we use this, hon?
Yeah, well, bringing again, you can use these for any different area of life, but today we're focused in on the money and the finance piece. So I remember when we started selling real estate, I was just even when we got married, I just always paid the bills. Like I had the checkbook, I paid the bills. I was happy to do it. It was kind of fun for me at the time. Back when you actually had to like write checks, put them like in an envelope and like mail them and the stamp and the whole thing. Like, I don't know, like I was just good at that for some reason. So I paid all the bills. And so that started even before we got into real estate. We get into real estate, that kind of continues. So I'm like writing all the checks, I'm paying the bills and doing all the things related to, making sure our credit stays good and everybody gets paid.
Yeah.
Somehow along the way you took on, well, all the checks that come in, you're putting them in the right accounts, you're making sure the accounts are okay and all this sort of stuff. It was great for a season until it wasn't. Until we got to the point where I was just super sad all the time. And you were the one that connected the dots of here is my strength of paying all the bills and you're cashing all the checks. I think we're broke the entire time. I'm like, all this money that's going out, it's all going like there's nothing. But
Yeah.
I never saw anything come in. So here was my strength. I'm playing to my strength. Here's something I really enjoy. I didn't feel like I needed to know all the details of all the accounts and stuff, but I was so unaware. I was like painfully unaware
Yeah.
of like where we were overall.
Yeah. And that's a great example. The here's one way to start with this exercise. Do it yourself first. In the area of finances, take a chart. At the top of the chart, write what things are most important. At the bottom of the chart, write least important. Draw a line. And then the other axis is going to be what gives you energy. You see these like, a charged green battery and a red draining battery. Like what gives you energy? What do you think you're good at? There can be a difference, by the way, between things you think you're good at and what gives you energy. We probably all
Absolutely.
get to seasons where
Highly
we're,
talented people
yeah,
will have a lot of things they can do. It doesn't, but just because you can doesn't mean you always should.
yeah.
So just
So
distinguish those.
yeah, distinguish that for yourself for sure. But on the right side, certainly it'll generally speaking be things that will feel like your unique ability, things that you're strong at, that give you energy. And on the left side, it's going to be what zaps your energy, what drains you, what are you not good at, etc. Right? We do this exercise for people that are just in general thinking about real estate and like what parts of the world. We use this for job descriptions. But here's a way to think about it for finances. Um, if there are areas that are are a natural strength for you, like you mentioned paying the bills, I think another one is like you tend to be the one that is taking the kids around to more doctor's appointments. So in
Mhm.
general, when we are sorting mail, if mail comes in and it is anything medical related, I just give it to you. I'm not saying that is like it gives you a lot of energy and like you're in this amazing mood after you sort it through the doctors, billing for insurance and everything else. But in our relationship, that has been an area that has been a focus. Taxes
Mhm.
or prepping for mortgage applications or managing rental property QuickBooks, that's fallen on my plate. It is something I'm
Mhm.
more wired for. It
Mhm.
certainly drains me less than it would drain you. Now, even that, I've got kind of a team to help us with it now.
Mhm.
But that would be examples of things that would fall on each side, right? There could be things that you could put as really high important. Let me give you an example. Um, making sure that our will and our legal documents are in place. Is that a high importance or low importance? It's high importance. I'm not skilled at that. You're not skilled at that. In theory, on both of our charts, that ought to show up in the upper left quadrant. And the thing to understand about the upper left quadrant is that is probably, if it is high, you need somebody to do it. And if you look, and if you're talking to your partner, you're like, it's not you and it's not me. That's when you absolutely go hire a professional, right? But the thing to start to put on this page is all of the things that need to happen around our finances, right? You're not judging, you're not just writing down the list of things you want to do. You're writing down all of the things that have to happen and all the things that you do, even if you're putting them, sort of below the line, or even if you're putting them on the left side of the page.
So what are some things, what are some things that for most people would need to fall on the quadrant somewhere because they're just a part of?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I kind of go back to like, let's actually just use this real quick as a jogger, right? So anybody that if as you are building net worth, tracking becomes important, right? Canceling or observing your financials, observing your expenses, cutting expenses on a regular basis. We'll talk with business people about like go through your credit card bills and highlight what are the recurring charges that you could get rid of, right? That would be an example of like that task needs to go on there somewhere for people. Go ahead.
I would also look at things like values and think about words that come to mind. Well, like usually one person's a spender, one person's a saver, right? So if I'm the saver, I might be more inclined to be looking at the emergency fund, and I'm inclined to look at, what are the baselines of different things. You are more between the two of us would be more of the spender, which the highlight of that is you're also the investor, right? You're the one that is going to take more of the risk when you're like, hey, it's time. Like we need to go buy this investment property or invest in this thing over here. So where are the places, what are the roles that you occupy in your relationship that you can start to take up some space in that area? So when my saver goes too far in one direction, like it could be cheap, it could be frugal, like we don't want to end up there. Like his ability to see potential and like, oh, we should go invest, like he'll balance that out. So figuring out like where are those, because it is a genius, the whole like being able to save, that's a really valuable trait. Like where does that fit within the relationship, and where does your ability to see things and take the risk and make the investment, where does that fall, and then how can you keep each other in check?
Yeah, that's so good. We shared on this on another call, just the idea that whoever has the biggest vision in an area, let them drive. I remember a mentor of ours. I remember the lobby of the hotel that we were in San Diego when I remember hearing this line of, hey, Alice is the saver. Alice wants an emergency fund. And then he turned to you and he's like, how much? And you gave him a 6-figure number. And he turns to me and he goes, did you hear that? I go, I heard it. He goes, okay, Alice, are you committed to that number? Yeah. Seth, get that money into a savings account. Stop arguing about this. Like Alice is a saver. Like that is a very valid goal that she has. Let's hit that goal. So when you find yourselves figuring out who is naturally more, perhaps like who's more offense, who's more defense, that's a great way to understand this. Then defer to the person for whom it is in their upper right quadrant. If it is one of your strengths and not the others, defer to that. The last thing you would want is the person who's not good at paying the bills because you thought somehow that was like the gender role that it should be. Like,
the value that comes to mind for that whole story you just told was security and stability, right? When we realize like, I want this amount of money in an account somewhere, and all of the rest of life can be happening, but I know it's right there. I'm actually able to play at a higher level because I have that safety and security sitting there, right? So like we have
to transfer money this afternoon, everybody. That's how that works.
This could be, $100, $500, 5,000, 5 million. whatever, but everybody's got their thresholds. So this is a great conversation to have in your partnership of like, is there a number that one of you needs to have in some sort of account that would make them
Yeah.
feel stable, especially when you're working together. If you are in business together, so you've got the business expenses, you got the household expenses, and if you don't have those separated, we have to have a whole other conversation because they need to be separated. But what do you need to have that sort of peace of mind to be able to move forward in a powerful way?
So here's where there might be a challenge. If you write out a list of things, it doesn't really matter if you hit it left or right. In fact, let me make it a very practical example. Let's say that I wrote checking the bills from insurance companies as the bottom left. It's something that drains my energy. I get to choose whether it drains my energy. But by putting it bottom left, I'm saying that it's not important. Now, let's say that Alice put that same thing in, and let's say she put it doesn't drain her energy, it doesn't give her energy. She puts it right on the line, but she puts it at the top. Now we can start to have conflict because all of a sudden, something that she is doing, that she's doing because she deems it to be important, I am saying it's not important. And by the way, there's no judgment about either of our perceptions. It's just the idea that this is what creates the conversation. So pay attention when you and your partner do this. Pay attention to where you put something higher up than your partner did or vice versa, and be willing to come from curiosity about that and ask the question.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. The fourth one, cadence. So this is for us really where we start to turn things into habits and goals, and we put them on a calendar. In a way, you could say to somebody, show me your calendar and show me your checkbook, and I can show you what matters to you, right? Or show you your goals. So here's what we think about it. And the metaphor, right, is like, we probably could have put a band on this image as well, but it's like this group of rowers, when they are in alignment, when it comes to the rhythm, they succeed. And the same group, just out of alignment when it comes to the timing of what they want, creates disaster or a lack of movement. And how many times with your partner is it not actually a function, not actually a problem of wanting different things? It's just that you don't want the same things at the same time. And so much of our life, I mean, I think about our world, right? Like we're busy. I was on a plane. I mean, I was gone at 5 a.m. and back at 1 a.m. yesterday to LA. And we travel a lot. Our kids are constantly doing things. And when we are sometimes at our worst with each other, we actually have to come back to realize it's not that we don't want the same things. It's just that we're out of sync alignment, right? That the tempo is an issue. So here's kind of a way we think about it. Go back to that wheel that you generated, right? Take the success criteria that you had on that wheel, and then we're going to talk about like basically scheduling habits and planning goals. And here's, you can kind of see it on a chart. I'm sorry if this is too small to read. It probably is totally too small to read. So we'll tell you what it says. And by the way, we'll give you these handouts later if you want it. So all we did is across the top of the chart. You could do this on a napkin, remember. We just wrote out the areas that mattered. So Alice, an example might be, I'm going to use the example of an emergency fund, right? And then on the left side of the page, what you really can't read at the very top there, it says mentor, guide, expert. We'll come back to that in just a second. But then down the line, it says hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, 3 years, 10 years. Now, obviously, you could write any time frame that you want, but the idea is to start to get specific, and these are simply like memory jogger questions. This is almost like a game of bingo. So, in fact, let me see if nope, okay. So let's say that the category that you use is savings account or emergency fund. And then you start to go down the line and figure out what could be some habits or goals that we want to put in place, right? So let's say you have a conversation right now and the partner that has the highest value of stability gives their number of here's what I'd really, really like to have in an emergency fund that is like not touch. It's not even in our regular bank, but this is my emergency fund goal. And then we say, great. what could we do? We could say, how about we establish a habit that every week when a paycheck happens, right? When a commission comes in or a paycheck occurs, or at least every month, X amount goes into that fund. And then you could say, okay, and then our goal is that a year from now, like our annual goal is that we put at least this amount into it and it sits at this balance a year from now. And you might have a number that you're like, wow, to hit the goal of what you want, we'd have to like do this 3 years in a row. This is like our 3-year goal would be to have that amount of money into an emergency fund. Mm-hmm. Right? What do you think on that, Hun? Or you can go to a different category.
Well, I think so. I think we've got different people listening to this conversation, right? There's some that work together, maybe don't work together, but regardless, you've got a business together called the household.
Yeah.
And so even just start there. What's the rhythm of conversations, if we have them, would decrease stress levels?
Yeah.
Where are the areas around money where it feels stressful, where it feels eggshelly, where it feels yuck? Where are the places that we're just choosing not to talk about because we don't even like how? So what are the rhythms that we can put in place to have some different conversations? What are the when you think about a big business, think about Apple or Tesla or whoever, right? Like how often are they talking about their numbers? They're probably talking about their numbers all the time.
Yeah, like in real time. Yeah. Yeah.
In real time, right? Like, so we don't have to talk about them every second of every day. But how often do you want to revisit your budget?
Yeah. So that could be, you could set a goal, take a column called, budgeting or tracking expenses, and set a goal annually or twice a year to revisit your budget. In our world, about the first of every month, I go through and do a new net worth tracker. Mm-hmm. So we were not always like that. And you're not like that right now. That's an area that for us, I take on. But I look at our net worth every 30 days, and probably about once a quarter, it shows up in our group planning plan, right? So here'd be another approach. Maybe there's things that you do right now once a year. Like a lot of people, they really only look at their income once a year when they're doing their taxes. What would it look like to change something right now that you do once a year and move it up on that chart, right? Again, move it up on the chart. Some of you do right now annually, move it up. What if you did it quarterly? What if you just closed out your books quarterly? For the daily group, for our real estate team, we were looking at our finances every 3 or 6 months, right? We're putting money in and we were watching our expenses, but we were kind of seat of our pants a little bit. And then we started a market center. We started a brokerage that required, under their franchise rules, every 30 days that we had to close the books. And now all of a sudden, we have a lot more accountability and a lot more eyes on the numbers because of that. Another one would be, when's the last time that by the way, we're pot calling kettle black right now. When's the last time you changed your will? When's the last time you reviewed your legal documents? When's the last time you looked into life insurance? When's the last time that you looked at canceling different expenses or shopping around for something? All of those things can show up on a chart like this. This became a bingo chart for us. We just picked an area that mattered, and we started to think through what would be habits that would go into these areas that would be most meaningful.
And there are things that in a couple where there are things that you do for our couple that, like you just said, you look at net worth once a month. I don't need to see it every month. The reality is, if I saw it every month, it'd probably freak me out. It probably actually caused me more stress to see some things. Like, I don't need to know bank accounts every week. You need to look at those every week, and they don't affect you in the same way they would affect me. So even having the conversations around, hey, you and I are going to check in on this monthly or quarterly, but I know you're looking at this at these stages.
Yeah.
That works too.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, guys, the exercise is this. The exercise is, grab this handout or literally grab a blank piece of paper and draw a bunch of lines. And all you're doing is you're taking the areas that matter to you that you first put in that wheel, right? So it could be like, let's say that the example was appreciation or cash flow. How often do you want to buy an investment property? Put it on this chart, right? So you write down, passive income as a column, and then you write down, what could I do to move the needle on this daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, 3 years, 10 years, so on and so forth. It just becomes a game of taking your habits and your goals and putting them on a calendar, sort of, and then having a conversation together. This is nothing more than a conversation starter in a way to get realigned when it comes to finances. Anything else you want to say on that one? Otherwise, we're on the last C. Okay. So, oops. The last C, this idea of a conductor. Alice and I met in a musical group, right? So like we've got a lot of like musical metaphors that seem to be in our life, and we hope that we are bringing beautiful music to the world. We certainly think our daughters are beautiful music that we brought to the world. And the interesting thing about an orchestra or a band with a conductor is they're not playing an instrument, but they are when people who are playing the instrument, which is you and I and everybody who's watching this, when we're out there making music in the world, if there is a conductor that we are both following for the timing, maybe they hit the tuning fork at the beginning and everybody kind of tunes in to the same frequency. When Well, that was a first for me. Did you cut out there too? All right, I think I might have lost Alice, and we'll see if she comes back. I just had to switch my Wi-Fi there. That was interesting. All right, we'll see if Alice comes back. But for everybody else, the conductor is the person that when we are looking for alignment in a particular area of life, this is the person that we choose to have as a leader. And so the questions that we would start to ask, and you can actually go back to that last chart, because this was the reason for it, right? This last chart about like who is the mentor or the guide or the expert. And the question is simply, who is the person that you would go to? Who is the expert that you will defer to? Who will we align ourselves with? Whose examples will we follow? Whose leadership will we embrace? All of those are examples of like, who do we want to choose? So in the financial area of life, it might be a question of, hey, are we going to follow Dave Ramsey? Is that going to be our leader? Is it going to be Susie Orman? Is it going to be the book? Is it Tony Robbins has to say about finances? If you are reading a book or you're listening to somebody on a podcast, maybe you're listening to Bigger Pockets and you're following Brandon Turner, the question is simply, who are you focused on? Who are you focused on learning from? And how can you do that as a couple? And if anybody can hear me right now, perhaps Mandy, tell Alice to go on Wi-Fi, not a connected account, and that might get her back on. The question is, who are you going to follow, and who can you both agree to follow? Some of the biggest challenges are when one of us is, following one leader, and the other one is like, I'll have nothing to do with that. I want to go in a completely different direction. Alice, I'm going to bring you back on stage if you're ready. There you go. Okay, hi, welcome back. We both cut out there, just so you know. That wasn't just you.
Weird.
Yeah, I had to switch to Wi-Fi, but it is what it is. So I just explained the conductor and kind of this idea of like, who will we both listen to and use as almost a mediator of our perspectives? Again, Tony Robbins, is it Dave Ramsey? Is it Susie Orman? Is it Die with Zero? Is it Justin Donald and the Lifestyle Investor? Is it Brandon Turner and Bigger Pockets? Is it Gary Keller, right? Gary Keller is somebody that we're like, that's a billionaire and we really respect him. And if we go into a room and Gary Keller talks about money, generally speaking, we'll look at each other and be like, he's smarter than both of us. Can we agree? We'll follow that game plan. We could reassess it and choose to follow somebody else. But we have found that we're most in alignment when we will find an expert outside of us to embrace their leadership. And what would you add?
Yeah, and you just named a whole bunch of big names that have influenced, several of them have influenced us and people that we've chosen along the way, some of them. And it started really small.
Yeah.
It started with the guy at church that was the guy that behind the scenes funded everything. I'm thinking of Dennis Harden in Bozeman, Montana, that went and had coffee with us. We're like, we didn't know anything. We didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. And yet we were like, he seems really smart with money. I wonder if he'd talk to us. Marty Painter, who sold life insurance in Wheaton, Illinois, right? Like we went and sat down with him. And I remember thinking, like, do we owe this guy money when we're done? Like, I don't even know. I don't understand how any of this works. And he just gave freely of his time and knowledge and expertise. And so it starts somewhere, and then you get to be that person for somebody else, because you will just hit this level of success. And now it's like you get to teach somebody else. And so bring people along the way, because again, like, who's teaching if we don't learn about this stuff from each other, like, where are we going to learn it? A lot of, again, I come from an immigrant family. Like, I was the first one to go to college, and like there was nobody to help me know anything. And so just take a look around you and bring somebody along on the journey with you, because you're going to be this for somebody else as well.
Yeah, I remember when we got to go meet Robert Kiyosaki, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad. There's an example of the book. The book was a guide, right? Sometimes they're podcasts, sometimes they're books, sometimes they're people that you meet in person. But the concept of, if you are feeling out of alignment, finding a shared voice, person, expert, guide, mentor that you both, to some degree, will defer to, right? Does not mean that you check your intelligence out the window. Right. This is not being blind.
It's not blind faith.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think I think that's it, right? That we're at near the top of the hour, which just nailed it on timing, hun, even with like losing reception and taking a break. Guys, if you're watching this and you would like some of the handouts that we did, we've got a page on realignedcouples.com/finances for that resource. And by the way, Realigned Couples, if you are watching this and you are a couple, specifically an entrepreneurial couple in real estate, man, this is like absolutely dialed in for you. If you are a couple and you resonate with this, and you're like, but we're not, we don't work together in real estate. We still want to hear from you, because all we know is this is a message, and these are conversations that we are passionate about facilitating, and we're figuring it out. We're figuring out exactly what's the right audience and how we're doing that. But we have started hosting a community for couples that work together in real estate, that these topics are like absolutely foremost on their minds. And we would love if you fit that category, somebody who does, we'd love to have them join in that community. And otherwise reach out. Alice, you get the last word. What would you like to add?
We're just really passionate about helping couples get back on the same page. So we know it's very easy with the speed of life to get off the same page. Sometimes it's like we've had times where it's like we're not even in the same book, not the same chapter, not the same book. We're kind of all over the place. And so we just want to help you get back on the same page. So any ways that we can help you do that, don't hesitate to reach.
See you soon. Take care.